She was standing at her front door, 71 years old, small frame, a wool coat she had worn every winter for the last 20 years, and she would not go inside. Not yet. Her granddaughter was behind her, holding shopping bags, impatient, a little confused. And the old woman turned around and said something that the granddaughter did not understand until 30 years later. She said, "You do not walk into a home the way you walk into a street. A home has a soul, and if you do not greet it properly, it will not protect you." I am Rabbi Naomi. I have spent over 30 years studying the intersection of ancient Jewish wisdom and the laws that govern prosperity, provision, and abundance. And that old woman at the door, that was my grandmother. What she did at that threshold, what she said, what she carried in her hands and placed against that doorpost every single time she came home. That is what I am going to teach you today. Because there is a secret in Jewish tradition about the entrance of a home that most people have never been told. Not even most Jewish people have been given its full meaning. It has been preserved inside certain families, passed from grandmother to grandchild, from teacher to student, for over 3,000 years. And when it is understood, truly understood, and applied with precision, it functions as what the ancient teachers called a seal on your household, a spiritual boundary that affects what can enter and what cannot, what can accumulate and what cannot leak away. I am going to take you through all of it today, but I need you to stay with me through every single piece. If you leave early, if you skip ahead, you will have fragments, and fragments of this teaching are not enough. The complete architecture is what produces the result. Before we go any further, I want you to type the words "Seal my home" in the comments right now. Do it before we continue. There is a reason I am asking. In this tradition, a declaration, spoken or written in the presence of others, creates what is called an anava contract, a humble agreement between your intention and the spiritual realm. You are not just commenting, you are opening a gate. Type it now, then stay with me. Most of you watching this have tried. I want to start there because I have seen it too many times. People who are genuinely working, genuinely trying, doing everything the modern world tells them to do. You have made budgets. You have tracked your spending. You have listened to the financial podcasts, the motivational content, the positive thinking exercises. Some of you have even tried the law of attraction, building vision boards, writing your goals every morning. And I am not here to tell you those things are wrong. I want to say that clearly. They are not wrong. But I have watched thousands of people apply them faithfully, and still, the floor of their financial life does not rise. The ceiling does not move. And there is a reason for that, a specific reason that the ancient sages understood and that modern financial culture does not teach. Here is the principle. The physical world is a shadow. Your bank account is not the source of your financial reality. It is the reflection of it. You cannot change the shadow by touching the shadow. If there is a leak in your finances, a persistent tightening, a ceiling you cannot seem to break through, the problem is not in the budget spreadsheet. The problem is in the spiritual architecture of your life. And the most important piece of that architecture, the piece that almost no one addresses, is the entrance. Think of it this way. Imagine a vessel, beautiful, well-crafted, strong walls. You pour provision into this vessel again and again. Income comes in, opportunities arrive, and yet somehow the level inside never rises the way it should, because there is a crack. Not at the center of the vessel, at the opening, at the top, at the point of entry. Every single thing that enters your financial life first passes through the entrance of your home. That is not metaphor. The sages of the Talmud documented this understanding thousands of years ago. They watched families who honored the threshold of their home maintain stability through economic collapse, through exile, through conditions that destroyed everyone around them. They were not luckier. They were not working harder. They were working on the right layer of reality. And today I am going to show you exactly what they knew. Let me take you back to a specific morning. I was 34 years old. It was the middle of January, early in the morning before sunrise, and I was standing in the kitchen of a small apartment in Jerusalem that my husband and I had rented while I was completing a year of advanced study. We had very little money. I mean that in the real sense. I remember the exact feeling of calculating whether we could afford 2 items at the market or only 1. My husband had a part-time position that barely covered the rent. My studies were not paid work. We were building something, but the building felt invisible, and the present felt tight in a way that is hard to describe unless you have lived it. That particular kind of anxiety, where you are not in a crisis exactly, but you are always one unexpected expense away from one. One afternoon, my teacher, a woman in her late 60s named Devorah, who had studied under one of the last great scholars of her generation, came to visit our apartment. She walked in, set down her bag, and stood still for a long moment. Then she said, without looking at me directly, "Your mezuzah is placed correctly, but it has never been activated with intention. The door knows it is there, but the household does not." I did not fully understand what she meant. I had grown up in a home with a mezuzah on the doorpost. I had kissed it the way I was taught as a child. I thought I understood it. She sat with me for 2 hours that afternoon. She showed me something I had never been taught: the complete practice of threshold entry. What to do, what to say, what to hold in your mind, the specific reason each element was encoded into the practice. I listened carefully, but I will be honest with you, I was skeptical. Not openly, but internally I thought, this is beautiful, this is meaningful spiritually, but this will not change whether we can afford both items at the market. I did not apply it immediately. I let the days pass, weeks actually, 3 weeks during which nothing changed and the tightness continued, and I thought about Devorah's words occasionally, but did not act on them. Then, one evening, I came home carrying groceries, and I stopped at the door. I do not know exactly why I stopped, but I stood at that threshold, and I did what she had shown me, completely, precisely, with full attention. I went inside. Within 48 hours, my husband received a call from a colleague he had not spoken to in over a year. That colleague had a project, a real project with real compensation. It was not a windfall. It did not solve everything, but it was the first movement, the first unmistakable sign that something had shifted. The vessel had been sealed at the entrance, and what I know now, 30 years of teaching later, is this: The entrance is not symbolic. It is the mechanism. Now I want to take you through exactly what this practice is, its components, its spiritual mechanics, and the precise way it is applied. Because there are 3 elements to the threshold practice. Most people know one of them. Very few know all 3 together, and the sages were explicit. It is the combination that functions as the seal. The first element is the mezuzah. I know many of you know this word, but I want to go deeper than the surface. The word mezuzah means doorpost, not the parchment inside, the doorpost itself. The practice of placing a sacred inscription at the entrance of a Jewish home comes from the verse in Deuteronomy, "And you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates." Inside the mezuzah case is a handwritten parchment containing the Shema, the foundational declaration of Jewish faith, written by a trained scribe in specific black ink on specific parchment with specific intention during the writing process. This is not decoration. This is a technology. The word inscribed on the outside of that parchment, the word Shin Daled Yud, is one of the divine names, and it is an acronym in Hebrew for the phrase Shomer Dlatot Yisrael, meaning the guardian of the doors of Israel. The mezuzah is a declaration that this doorway is not just a physical opening, it is a guarded entrance. It is placed on the right side of the doorpost as you enter, not the left, the right, at an angle tilting inward, as if leaning toward the home, directing blessing into the household rather than away from it. When was the last time you checked whether yours is correctly placed? Whether the parchment inside has been examined by a qualified scribe? A mezuzah with a damaged or faded parchment is like a guard who has lost his post. It is still there, but it is no longer functioning. Many households have this problem without knowing it. The second element is the kavanah, the intention, and this is the piece that almost no one teaches. You can have the most perfectly written, correctly placed mezuzah in the world and still walk past it every day without engaging it. Walking past it is not the practice. The practice is a specific act of acknowledgement each time you cross the threshold. You touch the mezuzah, not casually, with 2 fingers, with the right hand, touching the case, and then briefly touching your lips. But more important than the physical gesture is what happens in your mind in that moment. The ancient teachers described it as a cheshbon hanefesh at the threshold, a brief accounting of the soul. Before you enter your home, you pause. You do not carry the street inside with you, the anxiety, the frustration, the financial fear, the conflict from earlier in the day. You pause at that doorpost and you make a conscious choice about what you are bringing in. Because what you carry through your threshold, you deposit into your household, every time, without exception. This is why my grandmother would not go GDK inside until she was ready. She knew this principle at a bone level. She was not performing a ritual. She was maintaining the atmosphere of her home. By being intikeh, the third element is the bracha, the blessing spoken or held in the mind as you enter. There is a specific blessing in the tradition upon entering a home. But beyond the formal blessing, the teachers of Musar, the Jewish ethical tradition, taught that a person should enter their home with a specific conscious thought about provision, not gratitude as a performance, real recognition that the home you are entering is a vessel of divine provision, that the food in it, the warmth in it, the shelter it provides, These are not yours by right or by cleverness. They are evidence of an open channel between you and the source of provision. When you enter your home with that recognition, you are reinforcing the vessel. You are telling the spiritual architecture of your household, I know what you are. I honor what you are. I will not take you for granted. Now, when you combine all three, the correctly placed and regularly examined mezuzah, the intentional threshold pause, and the consciousness of entering as a recipient of provision, something specific happens over time. And I want to be precise about what I have seen in families who apply this consistently, because I do not want to speak in generalities. What tends to follow is not always a sudden inflow of money. What I have observed in family after family across 30 years is first a stabilization. The leaking stops before the filling begins. The unexpected expenses quiet. The financial disruptions that had been arriving regularly, suddenly they have longer gaps between them. Then, over weeks and months, people begin to report a different quality of opportunity arriving. Calls they did not expect, connections made that they cannot trace back to effort, an unusual clarity about a financial decision they had been avoiding. The sages called this hatzlacha. It is not exactly luck, and it is not exactly blessing. It is the condition that exists when a vessel is intact and held correctly. What I have given you today is one complete piece, and I want to be honest with you. It is a real piece. If you apply everything I have taught today with precision and consistency, you will feel the shift. But I want you to understand something about the nature of this work. This practice is one element inside a larger architecture. In my teaching program, the complete course I have developed over 20 years, called The Laws of the Household, we go through 12 specific practices that together form what the tradition calls a Beit Me'uchad, a unified household, one in which the spiritual and material are aligned at every level. We cover not just the threshold, but what happens inside the home, where certain objects should and should not be placed, what words should never be spoken inside the walls of your house, how you close the home at night, the practice of Havdalah as it applies to financial transition. It is not a collection of tips. It is the complete plan, because one brick does not build a fortress, and you deserve the full fortress. If you are serious about this, not as a spiritual experiment, but as a real and permanent shift in the financial atmosphere of your household, the link is in the description. Everything you need to take the next step is there. Do not wait until the pressure gets worse to move. The clarity you are feeling right now is itself part of the opening. Move while the gate is in this position. Now, I want to tell you something about what happens next, because there is a test that comes after applying this teaching, and I have watched it stop people who were on the edge of a real breakthrough. In the next 24 to 72 hours after you begin applying the threshold practice, pay close attention. You are not looking for a dramatic sign. The spiritual realm does not open with fireworks. It opens with what I would describe as a whisper in the physical world. You might find a small amount of money somewhere you forgot to check, a pocket, an old bag, a drawer you have not opened in months. You might receive a message from someone who owes you something, or has been meaning to connect with you. You might notice an unusual mental clarity about a financial decision or conversation you have been circling around and avoiding. These are not coincidences. These are what the tradition calls Reshit, the first fruits, the very first sign that the channel has responded, and it is essential that you acknowledge them. Say aloud, "I receive this. This is a sign of movement." Because here is where most people make the mistake that undoes everything. Right after the first whisper arrives, and sometimes even before it, something tightening comes. A bill arrives that feels larger than expected. An opportunity does not come through as hoped. Something feels like it moved in the wrong direction. This is not evidence that the practice has failed. This is the test of the vessel. The ancient teachers were explicit about this. Every opening in the spiritual realm is followed immediately by a weighing. The question being asked is whether you trust the process or whether you trust the panic, whether you will speak life over what has been opened or whether you will speak death over your own breakthrough. Stay in the posture of certainty. Do not close what has been opened with your own fear. The practice is not the problem. The test is part of the practice. What you receive today is knowledge that certain families have carried privately for generations. Not secrets kept out of selfishness, but teachings preserved because they require the right container to hold them and the right intention to activate them. You now have both. Today, I want you to do one thing. Go to your front door, touch the mezuzah if you have one, and examine where it is placed. If you do not have one, look up what is required for a kosher mezuzah and take that first step. And before you enter your home tonight, for the first time in what may be a long time, pause. Stand at that threshold with full attention. Acknowledge where you are stepping. Decide what you are bringing in. Do not carry the street inside. And know that you are not just crossing into a building. You are crossing into a vessel of provision that is waiting for you to treat it as such. Tell me in the comments, what is the one thing from today's teaching that you are applying first? I want to know. I read these comments. I am looking for the names of the people who are truly taking action, because those are the ones I want to speak to directly in future teachings. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, do it now and turn on the notification bell. Next week, I am going to reveal the specific objects that certain families place inside their home near the entrance. Objects that the tradition describes as either amplifying or blocking the seal we created today. If you are not subscribed with the bell on, you will miss it. And given where you are right now in your financial life, you cannot afford to miss it. And if what was shared today reached something real in you, if it confirms something you have felt quietly for a long time but could not name, press the like button. It tells this platform that wisdom like this deserves to reach someone else, someone who is right now standing at the door of their own life, wondering why it will not open. Maybe your action today puts this teaching in front of that person. May the entrance of your home be sealed with peace. May what is meant for your household find no obstacle at your door. May the provision that carries your name reach you completely, without leaking, without blockage, without delay. Go now and enter your home like you mean it. Shalom.